Alex, the 2024 NFL Draft is in the books. Today, we're going to talk about our favorite steals in this draft. Why don't you kick it off, Alex? Who's one of your favorite steals for this draft?
Well, I'm going to start with my beloved Raiders. And what we did in the first round, we won't talk about, but what we did in the second round was a guy who was a fringe first round pick. A lot of people had him mocked actually going to the Cowboys, but he slides to 44. And the Raiders picked up Jackson Powers, from Oregon. A center who's going to play guard for us because we did bring back Andrew James, but he's going to be able to slide in and start, or perhaps part-time start until he's up to speed, or the Raiders feels that he's ready to step in immediately, as we did sign Cody Whitehair. But from my perspective, he is a day one starter, and this guy brings nasty stuff to the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Hands down, the best center, the best center easily in this draft. A guy that was on my top 25 big board, first round talent, like you said, a plug and play starter all day. To get a guy like this at pick 44 overall, I think is the absolute definition of a steal for the Raiders, because I'm with you, Alex. Whether it's guard or center, he's going to be a guy that's going to be an impact starter day one for them. Just tremendous value for the Raiders there. A guy that I'm going to start here in the first round, Alex, because there was a couple guys in the first that slid in this draft way further back than I think most of us thought. And a guy that I'm circling is Jared Verse at number 19 to the Rams, because this is a guy that most people thought, myself included, had the potential to be a top 10 pick. He's that kind of talent, the best power rusher in this class. He had a really high pass rush win rate in college, one of the best in all of college football. This is a steal for the Rams at 19, and I think it also addressed a need for them. So great pick there in the first round.
Yeah, absolutely. Jared Verse. And you know what? A little unknown thing that they did right behind him in the second round was pair two teammates together. And Brandon Fiske was a guy that popped during the combine. So you lose Aaron Donald, but you find Kobe Turner, you find Young, the linebacker, two guys who popped last year. And then you come back when you add Jared Verse. And again, I'm just slightly mentioning Brandon Fiske as well. And that the second round, you pair two guys who are very familiar. You get that pass rush back up to speed. You get a couple of guys so you can rotation, because Aaron Donald is not very. This is a guy's guy. We're talking about first ballot Hall of Famer. You don't just go and draft another guy, another Aaron Donald, and then plug and play. It's gonna take some time. And now they have a young nucleus on that defense together that can help and grow with this team as they go into the next phase of what the Rams will be moving forward. Another guy that I have, TJ Tampa, Ravens. This is a guy that was said to be, we saw on a few boards, he was rising to even be a fringe first round pick, but definitely a second to maybe early third round pick. He slides all the way to the fourth to none other than the Ravens. And I mean, the way that this team is set up, they were looking in the Ravens, that is, they needed another DB to really step up and step into position. Marlon Humphreys, really a shutdown corner that was trending up, but unfortunately with back-to-back injuries, he's been slowed. So now you get to bring in a young guy, and what better team to go to for a guy like TJ Tampa than the Ravens? And in the fourth round, great value. He's going to fit he fits the character. He fits the Ozzie Newsome, Eric DeCosta mold in terms of what they've been doing throughout their career as a GM, and now a consultant there as Ozzie Newsome. So I think they got a steal in TJ Tampa, who's going to be able to play behind Marlon Humphreys and learn, while Nate Wiggins is the other starter on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he was easily one of the top 5 corners in this draft. For him to slide that far is crazy. I couldn't imagine him going past the second round when the draft opened. And of course, the Ravens, a team that seems to draft well every single year. They trust their board. This guy falls to him, and he fits perfectly what they want to do. Another corner that slid in the first round here was Quentin Mitchell, my number 1 corner in this class. I think he's hands down the best corner in this draft class. A guy that, Alex, you thought might even go in the top 10 in this draft. He's that kind of talent. And for him to be available this late, for the Eagles to get him at pick 22 in this draft is crazy, crazy value and an absolute steal.
How he does it again and how he keeps doing it, no pun intended, we don't know. But obviously, the draft gods were shining down on Philadelphia. I mean, one of the big things, the biggest thing that I saw coming out of Philly in the debacle that they were last year was simply that back end got exposed, and it was simply because that pass rush that they had, the record-breaking 70 sacks the year before, was unable to get the pressure they got the previous year, and it left the back end exposed. I mean, people were walking around with burnt toast, cornerbacks on their jersey, and then you also have Darius Slay, who is getting up there in age. So now you have a jolt in terms of Quinyon Mitchell that you are able to plug and play with what they're able to do, and hopefully helps that back end out. You have a veteran there in Darius Slay who's going to be able to teach him some things, and we should be looking forward to a better defensive presence and defensive effort from not only Quinyon Mitchell, but now you also have Vic Fangio back there as a defensive coordinator, and we know what type of defensive coordinator he is in this league. For me, another steal that I thought that I think kind of went under the radar a little bit just because there have been so many receivers in this draft, and it was kind of a weak tight end draft, was Jatavion Sanders. Now, he was supposed to be a third-round pick on a lot of boards. He ended up going in the fourth to the Panthers. We know how starved the Panthers are for receivers with that young quarterback. Now you have a brand new coaching staff that's going to try and right the ship with Bryce Young. We know they traded up into the first round to get Xavier Leggett, and I'll just simply say here, one of Steve Smith's picks, and we know how Steve Smith's picks end up being in this league. But now you get to add a tight end, and what are the two things that are a young quarterback's best friend outside of what's in the trenches? But in terms of skill set, it's a running game and a tight end. So now you have fit him with a tight end. You have the veteran Adam Thielen. You can really put Terrence Marshall either in the slot or move him down to third or fourth on the depth chart, because now Xavier Leggett is on that other side, and you have a plethora of receivers that are there to go, and you can add Jatavion Sanders to the mix to be an outlet for this young quarterback.
Yeah, this was a tight end class that was viewed as kind of weak. We know Brock Bowers was kind of the crown jewel of the tight end class, but this is a good player, and I think he got a little bit overlooked. I had him as the number 2 tight end in this class, and I think that's tremendous value where they got him, and I think it's a good fit too. Another steal for me, Alex. How about Peyton Wilson, the linebacker out of North Carolina State? Late in the third round, Steelers get arguably the best off-ball linebacker in this draft. He put on a show at the combine. I mean, this guy really showed the athletic ability that he has, the movement skills. He's so fluid, fast. I didn't think for a chance, Alex, that he'd still be on the board at pick 98. I know health is a big question mark with him, but there's too much value to ignore when you're getting him that late in the draft. Once again, 98, didn't see that coming. I think he's a steal for the Steelers.
Yeah, no pun intended once again. But the big sign in Patrick Queen, that was something that they needed. They had been really slow to bring in people at the middle linebacker position. Obviously, Devin White getting injured was a big blow because this was a guy that was trending upward. But now you bring in Patrick Queen, who's still fairly young, to bring a jolt to the middle linebacker position. You have Landon Roberts as a starter. Now you can bring in Peyton Wilson. You talk about his injury, but now he doesn't immediately need to start. This is a guy that ran a 4.43, and to your point, sideline to sideline. You can bring him along slowly. And one thing that we know that the Steelers do well and develop well are wide receivers and as well as linebackers. And here's another one to add to the list. So I was looking through, I know we talked about it, Brad. We all have a lot of sleepers that we want to cover. So we're always trying to shrink things down. One of the guys that I had as a fringe first round that ended up going in the fourth round, and he was really a second round on most draft, a solid second round pick on most draft boards, Troy Franklin to Denver. Now, not only did Denver draft Bo Nix, but now you go and you get to pair him with a familiar face in Troy Franklin, who I did not expect to be here. That also tells you how deep this draft was in terms of the skill position for wide receiver. He only has right now. They have Marvin Mims at the slot. They have the veteran Cortland Sutton, who's actually been holding out because he wants a new contract. So who knows what's going on there? You have Tim Patrick coming back from, being out 2 years in a row with an ACL. So we know he's going to be slow to get back on the field, to get back in football shape, as he hasn't played in 2 years. But you go back to the well, but you got the great value in the fourth round, again, with a rookie quarterback. And the only person in terms of the depth chart right now that he'd be pushing would be Josh Reynolds. And this is a guy that I think, who is a low end receiver, respectfully, but this is a guy I think that Troy Franklin should be able to come in with the second round grade that he had, and what the production that he put up at Oregon with Bo Nix. He should have immediate chemistry and be able to push Josh Reynolds to get into this lineup early and often.
Yeah, no doubt, Alex. Another guy that I was fortunate enough to see play live. He's got big time speed, big time traits, athletic. He can run the whole route tree. I really like this guy, and I think you hit on it perfectly. Most people had him as one of the 10 best receivers in a good wide receiver class, and somehow he slid in this draft, but he does pair perfectly with his old quarterback in Bo Nix. So there's going to be chemistry there right off the bat. I think it's just a perfect fit for what they want to do, and a really good value pick. So that's definitely a steal. I got another wide receiver steal for you, Alex. How about Jerry Rice's son, Brendan Rice, out of USC? What a player this guy has been. Maybe not on the same level as a Troy Franklin or some of these other guys, but I easily think he was one of the top 20 wide receivers in this class. Fell all the way to the 7th round to the LA Chargers. I have no idea how a guy like this falls that far. He should have been picked, quite frankly, 100 picks earlier than pick 225. We've touched on here, really good wide receiver class. I get that. But like I said, you can still make the case that this guy was probably in the top 20, maybe top 25 wide receivers on most people's boards. Tremendous value to get a guy like that in the 7th round, a guy that I think is going to see the field early and often for the Chargers.
Right. So the Chargers, they let Mike Williams walk, who signed with the Jets. They traded Keenan Allen off. So the only thing that was on that depth chart worth anything, they also let Gerald Everett go. So the only thing that was really worth anything on that depth chart was Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnson, who stiff hips Johnson. Sorry, Quentin, you've got to get better in terms of being able to exceed in this league. And they went, as a lot of people had them mock, as myself included, had them getting a receiver, had them getting Malik Neighbors, but they did go Joe Alt, so they needed to get weapons. To get Brendan Rice, this is a guy that obviously Harbaugh is familiar with, having recently been in the league, and this is what you do. Similar to Pete Carroll, when you come in the league, you have your guys that you've watched, and this is where you make your bread in these mid to late rounds, when you can find a gem like Brendan Rice. You brought it up in our last pod. I always make an emphasis to go back and listen, because Brad did bring up the fact that a team like the Lions skipped over a receiver of this magnitude, given how scarce their receiver room is, to skip over him and leave him there all the way to the 7th round, right there for the Chargers to pick up at great value, and a star wide receiver room who's probably going to be able to get on the field to show if he belongs and can prove himself in this league. Big name to live up to. Obviously, we know how it works out in not just this sport, but any sport with a father and son team. When you have a father that's a great to the magnitude of Jerry Rice, you're coming in with big shoes to fill. So hopefully Brendan is up to the challenge. I have one more pick. Jalen Wright to the Dolphins. If you could have written a movie script, a Martin Scorsese script, you would have written Jalen Wright to the Dolphins. He fits. He's a dual threat running back coming out of Tennessee. He had a 3rd round grade. He was picked in the 4th. He fits perfectly in there. And people will say, I heard a lot of people, and I saw a lot of chatter around, they have all of these running backs. Well, Raheem Mostert was hurt. A-Chain was hurt. They both had good production, but they consistently got hurt. So they need a heavy rotation. And one thing we know from Mike coming out of that 49ers, system, running backs, and you want to have a few. If we look at what they did in San Francisco with the amount of running backs they had, he's building the same exact thing over there with Miami, to continuously have a good rotation of running backs that will be able to be productive, their running game to be productive. It doesn't necessarily have to be a running back in 2024 NFL. You need to have a productive running game, and adding him to the mix, he is another person that's going to make a lot of fantasy owners mad, because you don't know who to play on which week. However, for in terms of actually what the production they need from their running game, he's going to be able to be a plug and play player immediately and be able to fill in should any one of these starting running backs get hurt.
Yeah, perfect fit. Absolute perfect fit. A guy who's a home run hitter, explosive. They're putting together a track team in Miami with all this speed, and it totally makes sense. I like the value there. He was the number 2 running back on my board and a really good player. My last steal of the draft here, Alex, Mekhi Wingo, defensive tackle out of LSU, going in the 6th round. I thought there was no way this guy would fall past the 4th round. This guy is explosive. He's a twitchy athlete. He's got a great first step. He's a good pass rusher, can collapse the pocket. Just a really, really high level player to go that late in the draft. And I think he is for sure going to be a steal.
This was another position that I think you had as a need for them, is trying to get this pass rush up and going. Defensive tackle about, now here's the thing, and we know why he went late, and it's simply because of height in the position that he plays at 6 feet, 284 to put him in the middle. This is why he ended up being available in the 6th round. But good value pick. We were looking at Detroit to have another pass rusher, looking for another pass rusher. We talked about their draft. Again, shameless plug again to go back and listen to the pod to hear what we talked about the NFC North teams, Detroit being one of them. But bringing him in is going to add to that rotation that they have there. James Houston, who was a pass rusher, ended up getting hurt last year. They brought over DJ Reader, so now they get to have a nice rotation. Should anybody get injured, to consistently try and keep these guys healthy. And this is the name of the game when you get late in the draft, is you want to at least have some type of rotational players that can come in and fresh and maybe, for at minimum, maybe take 10 snaps to give a guy a breather, but you can still keep that pass rush up and going for whichever respective position. And here's another guy that is a steal and can seem to do so.